Kim Fu uses the vanishing of human taste to discuss the feeling of longing, as well as to discuss generational divides. I discuss this and more on today's episode. Back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels, and I have a bit of a doozy for you today. It's Short Story Tuesday, so I want to talk about a short story of interest. And today's short story is all about humans mass losing an ability to do something they've been able to do for a while, and also generational divides. I am referring to Do You Remember Candy by Kim Fu, which comes from her short story collection Lesser Known Monsters of the 21st Century. An interesting title, but the cover also looks pretty beautiful too, and this was published in 2022. For those who don't know, Kim Fu is a Chinese-Canadian writer who has been writing for about the past 10 years. Their first book was is something called For Today I Am a Boy, or something like that. It's about a Chinese transgender teenager who's sort of navigating those feelings, and it won a few awards and gained Kim Fu a little bit of notoriety. And then Kim Fu has been writing steadily ever since, writing short story collections as well as other novels. This is the first time I've encountered her work, but I really like what I found in the short story collection. It's pretty fascinating, even if it is kind of sad and maybe it feels a little doomer-esque, like there's no hope, which is probably not the best emotion to put forward about certain things about the state of the world. So it's pretty high quality. I found this at my local library. Don't forget to patronize your local libraries. They might have interesting short story collections like this. But without further ado, let's talk about Do You Remember Candy? I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So, Do You Remember Candy focuses primarily on Allie. She is a single mother and a web designer, at least in the before times. She's out eating at a sort of cafe one day when she suddenly discovers that food tastes weird to her. She attributes that to the cafe, and spits out the food and kind of demands her money back. And then she discovers that this is happening to other people as well. And she sort of responds to this by going to another sort of Vietnamese restaurant and ordering food. But again, the food tastes kind of bland there. Allie has to deal with the fact that there's no taste to food, or human beings can no longer taste food. And not only is this a problem for Allie, it's a problem for the entire world, as people everywhere can't seem to taste food. It happened either suddenly or steadily, but people are going through this problem. It sort of ruins industries and the economy tanks, but there are other industries that sort of take its place. There is hope that this might help with climate change, but it ultimately does not do that. And so as a result, support groups sort of rise up to sort of help people deal with this change, and also for people to talk about, what food once tasted like. And Allie, for her part, she can't stop thinking about candy. She sends an email to her friends do you remember what candy tastes like? Do you remember candy at all? A few of those of her friends' coworkers reach out to her to sort of help them begin or to help them go through an immersive experience where she simulates a memory of a certain food, even if she can't give them the sense of smelling or tasting that again. While all of this is happening, Jay, Charlie, or Allie's daughter, is sort of growing up. And is trying to, have normal human experiences. She doesn't want to take lunch to school because she's the only student, or she's the only, teenager who seems to be doing that. Jay also develops a little bit of a romance with a boy named Charlie. and she tries to kiss him, but finds that it doesn't really have that much of an effect for some reason. And Jay also seems to be struggling to understand her mother. And as the story comes to a close, like Jay seems to be doing well in school, and Allie's sort of new business is taking off. But like Allie notes that Jay will never understand the thought or the sensation of tasting food. That'll be just like a foreign concept to Jay, and within like a couple of years or so, like within a generation, like no one's really going to be alive like Allie, who remembered candy or remembered that humans could even taste things in the first place. And that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, this is quite a bizarre story, very similar to many of the other short stories in this collection. This sort of depicts the not too distant future of a possible human outcome, and it doesn't seem to be very positive. A lot of the short stories in this collection detail a tragic event, or a tragic future for humanity based on something that's probably already going on or is in the direction that we're heading, which isn't a lot of fun, but it does present like interesting sort of ideas and interesting sort of scenarios for what humans could go through. Although this one seems a little bit less realistic, because I doubt there's a way that taste could suddenly disappear for everyone. Unless an anomalous, like, horrifying apocalyptic event happened. But one of the themes that Ken-Fu is writing about in this story is that of longing for something remembered, longing for something that maybe is paired with a memory of sort, maybe a very positive memory. Allie and many others yearn for the remembered sensation of eating tasty food, or food that was important to them. Many of them are going to like support groups and like to talk about food and what it means that taste is no longer there. And Allie is sending emails to people that are just like, do you remember food? Do you remember candy? Do you remember eating candy? Like what was that like for you? Because for Allie, like, eating candy might not have been that great of a thing, but it was tasty, it was delicious, and it brought about certain memories. And she really wants to know about details of the process, details of the act of eating candy, because maybe that's more important than the act itself, is what is paired with it, like what you were feeling at the time and what the feeling of eating candy brought to you, and maybe the simple joys that you experienced during all of that. So a lot of it is memory centered, as Allie is beginning to realize as she runs her sort of business. Allow me to read you an interesting quote from this. The people demanding Allie's services will be gone in a generation. She doesn't create sensations, she awakens a memory of them, and only in those who are primed for it, who want badly to return to those memories, who want to believe. And that's just an interesting quote, just because like, these people understand they could possibly never taste, candy or pho or any type of food ever again, but there's the idea of eating it and the pleasant feeling, and they just want that to be evoked. They want to reside in those memories, because you don't really know what you have until it's gone, which I think is a large part of the story. But not only Allie, but also Jay seems to be going through this too. Allie's daughter Jay. She and that happened with a kiss, where she kisses a boy that she's interested in, named Charlie, and the kiss doesn't feel that great. Maybe it's because the taste sensation is gone, and kissing is part taste or something like that. It's the feeling on the lips, which you don't necessarily have anymore. So I think in a way she kind of yearns for like that kiss, because that might reduce her worries, reduce her fears that she has, ease the darkness that might be residing within her, as I think is what Ken-Fu is suggesting here in this story. And so not only did it kind of impact the taste of food, but it also impacted impacted maybe kissing along with that, which was such a important formative experience for teenagers, but maybe they won't have that ability to connect anymore and using kisses. Maybe they might be able to connect in other ways, but it seems like that kissing has been kind of ruined by this entire thing. And maybe maybe that's impacting Allie here, or sorry, not Allie, but Jay here. Essentially, she wants to feel that, but that's not coming to her, unfortunately. And so I think that a big thing about this story is like, what happens when something that is ingrained in the human experience just vanishes? What if something you normally do every single day was something you could no longer do? And I think what it does is it creates a lot of struggle, a lot of sadness, a lot of grief. But humanity is great at adapting, and so maybe people can adapt to these such changes, but that's still going to produce a longing, a feeling of desire for that specific memory that you might have of that experience, and you'll kind of chase that. And then for people like Jay, for people who are too young to really remember that something was gone like that, there still might be that feeling that something fundamental to the human experience just isn't there. That's something that people have relied on for years, just isn't as present as it once was, and so you're not going to be able to rely on that to chase whatever humans were chasing with that. So I think it's interesting how Kenpu kind of removes the ability to taste and reveals a lot about humans in this story. Kim Boo is also touching upon generational divides in this story. Jay and other children her age exist in a world without a taste for food, or without a strong reliance on the taste for food. They can't really understand it, so when the food is kind of eliminated from their lives, it's not as impactful, let's say, as it would have been with Allie here. So they're really incapable of understanding what exactly they're missing. So again, it's easy to adapt for them, but at the same time, they don't really understand what the adults are going through. They can't understand that because food was a huge part of society, and now it's no longer that huge part. And so they don't really understand how much humanity changed, even though it did change. And ultimately, I think what'll happen here is, whereas with Jay being unable to understand, Allie in this story and her sadness, Allie's gonna also become increasingly distanced from Jay in this story, because without the reliance on food, this is going to create a new type of society that is becoming increasingly alien to Allie. She's not going to recognize the world around her, and there's not really going to be a big place for people like her who remember the old world. She'll just be viewed as an oddity, someone who had a skill at one point but no longer does, and is kind of more ingrained with the old world than with the new, which is really sad. And you kind of do see a little bit of that in the world today. Even without people losing taste, it's still possible to see people who are used to an older world, maybe with COVID or something like that, that doesn't seem to exist today, and it's really hard to adapt. But it is possible to adapt. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be fun. Another thing that Kenpu seems to talk about here, which isn't something they go into a lot of detail, but it's interesting to point out that the world does adapt to this, but it adapts in a way that keeps the status quo, that still allows some people to gain wealth and people to control the system, and everything that people were hoping would be fixed by this elimination isn't kind of really fixed. And that's not something that you see just in this particular short story. You see this in other short stories in this collection too, very thematic. But I don't think Kenpu is really saying anything in particular with that. I think they're more writing based on how they're feeling at the time, with all that's going on in the world around them, and things being oppressive, and it seeing like there's a bleak outlook for humanity. Maybe that's what type of future that Kenpu is writing here. Again, it's not really healthy to have that sort of doomer sort of perspective on the world, because it might prevent you from taking action action when it's necessary. But if that's how you see it, this is very much a sort of time capsule type book, especially if the world gets better later on. You can see, through this, like how people viewed the world and what kind of perspectives they had on the future of humanity. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Do You Remember Candy by Kim Fu. Pretty solid short story, definitely a lot of fun, or not technically fun, but certainly a good thing to read, a lot, very interesting to read. And so I definitely recommend this to you if you haven't read it before. Definitely seek it out, maybe at your local library. They might have this short story collection there, and you might even buy it as well, because the other short stories in the collection are worth reading as well. If you have any thoughts on this, or you just want to say something about my review, let me know in the comments below. Would love to hear from you and have a discussion about this. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this author or this short story collection if they don't already know. Also join the Discord if you want to have further conversations about books, movies, TV, and other sorts of things like that. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and tasteless travels. Farewell.